I am actually going to begin the introduction. So, welcome everyone to Culture Reframed's webinar on preventing sexual assault with sex education. My name is Dr. Gail Downs, and I am founder and CEO of Culture Reframed. We're thrilled that we had nearly 1,000 people register this, which we can see here the importance that people realize that young people need to have access to science-based sex education that speaks to the world that young people inhabit. A world where hypersexualized images and pornography have become the wallpaper of their lives. This webinar speaks directly to Culture Reframe's mission, which is to stop the emotional, behavioral, and sexual harms of pornography and hypersex media to children and youth. At Culture Reframed, we achieve our mission in 5 ways. We raise awareness and shift cultural narratives about the impact of porn and hypersexualization on kids. We build resilience and resistance in kids to hypersexualized media and porn culture. We advance the academic research on the harms of pornography. And we foster institutional change to improve child protection and safeguarding. And finally, we advocate for policy change to better protect our kids from the harms of both pornography and hypersexualized media. Through our robust programs and courses and other resources for parents, medical and legal experts and educators, we help to ensure kids develop healthy, respectful and egalitarian views of sex and intimacy throughout their lives. You can find our courses on our website, Culture Reframed. We invite you to these courses, they're all free. And we also invite you to take a close look at our website, culturereframed.org, which is chock full of resources, videos, as well as an academic library. Our porn critical sex education curriculum is the first of its kind, in that it provides educators with the knowledge, PowerPoints, and lesson plans to help young people navigate this pornified world. As we built the course and read the research, it became clear that if we fail to give young people robust sex education, then we allow the porn industry to enter the vacuum, which ultimately undermines the healthy, emotional, social, cognitive development of young people. Culture Reframed, I'm happy to say, celebrates its 10th anniversary this year, and we are proud to say that our work has national and international reach and has been instrumental in shifting the narrative on the way narrative on porn to one that foregrounds the harms done to girls and boys. We hope that you will join us as we embark on our next 10 years. All our programs and resources are free because we want all people, irrespective of income, to have access to our work. As a non-profit, we rely on donations, however small or large, and we would not be celebrating our 10th year were it not for the generosity of our supporters. So thank you. I'd now like to hand it over to Dr. Mandy Sanchez, Culture Reframe's Director of Programming, who will introduce the speakers and moderate the panel. So Mandy, over to you.
Thank you so much, Gail. I really appreciate it. Before I do introductions, I just want to remind everyone that you can use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen to type any questions that you have for panelists, and we will definitely have time afterwards to address those questions. So I first want to welcome all of you and welcome our two panelists. It's so great to have you here. A little bit about Amy Lang. Amy Lang is a sexuality and parenting educator and sexual abuse prevention specialist. She also has a certification in neurodiversity and sexuality and supports parents of neurodivergent kids. And Kerri Isham is a certified sexual health educator. She specializes in sexual abuse prevention, educating children, youth, and adults with support needs and the impact of pornography viewing on children and youth. So welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. And I think we're just going to jump right in. So Amy, we're going to start with you and just understanding why we need to teach about sexual health early and proactively instead of reactively.
Thank you. It's a great question. And thank you so much for having me here. I love you all and supporting you and your mission. So the main reason that we need to start talking to kids sooner rather than later is that it's protective. And so kids who, like the very first sex talk is correct names for private body parts. And so if kids have open communication with their parents, and that this is parent-led, they do better, they feel better about themselves, and they're protected because when someone is talking openly with their young child about sexuality and how babies are made and bodies and boundaries, predators, they don't want to mess with a kid that's sex educated because it shows them that their family's engaged, they're talking with them. And then the other thing too, when you start sooner, it's just easier on everyone. Your 5-year-old, when you say the usual way, a baby's made is that the penis goes in the vagina, and that for them is like, and then you say, this is how butter's made, it's the same. And then that establishes it's a normal part of your family life. And so it's just way easier to start sooner. For those reasons. I mean, really the main one is the two are the safety, and then it's just easier on you.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you so much. I love that notion that it's can be normalized as well, right? And very protective. And what do you think, Kerri, about why we need to teach this sexual health information early and proactively?
Great. So I'm super excited to be here too. I met Gail several decades ago in Florida at a workshop. And so to be here with this group of amazing people is kind of legendary for me. So thank you for inviting me. One of the things that I tell parents is it's really important when we think about building a house, we want a really solid foundation. And when we're talking to kids from a young age, that solid foundation is there. If we wait and we want to talk to kids about puberty, we sort of are starting off with a crumbly foundation, and it's harder, as Amy was saying, to just say, hey, did you notice that you have pubic hair? It's kind of like a random thing. So I want the conversations early, definitely protective, like Amy said. I want little people to know about their private body part names, safe, unsafe, and secret touch. I want them to know about trusted adults. And having this information, one, it shuts down mythical information that kids hear on the playground, on the internet, from their cousin, from their Uncle Bob. Kids are sponges, and they really only absorb what they need at the time, and they're going to leave the rest. Adults, caregivers are a child's lifesaver. So having these conversations early just builds trust for future conversations. In today's climate too, when we teach early, parents are able or caregivers are able to be able to share their own personal values. And I think that's something that some parents are fearful that, when Amy and I are sharing information, that we're sharing our beliefs and values. I'll speak for myself, and then Amy, you can chime in if I'm incorrect. But I don't teach about values and beliefs. I teach about evidence-based research. I teach things that kids are needing to know in this very kind of wild world that we live in. And then if parents don't agree with something stated like masturbation is healthy and normal, then the parents would insert. Kids who are talked to about their bodies early, they're more likely to report if something's going on, a rash or a lump or a bump that wasn't there before. They're going to tell their parents. In an open household, they're going to feel comfortable doing that. Let me see. What else do I want to say? Decreases confusion. Kids often will say, well, the baby grows in the mommy's stomach. So when they get healthy information, up-to-date information, they don't have to worry about that. And I think the last thing that I would want to say is having sexual health education from a very young age, and I mean like infancy on, it sets a foundation for kids to be able to not only set healthy sexual boundaries, but maintain them through like the teen years and adulthood.
Absolutely. Amy, did you want to respond to that?
No, I totally agree.
Yeah.
And I think that I love your foundation analogy. And then the other thing for me is that when we look at child development, we know everything about all the things, right? We know how to keep them healthy. We know about their academics, their brains, and all of that. And the one place that we don't focus is on sexual development. And this is something we do our entire lives. And I believe that children, well, humans, have a human right to this information. And one of the things that I also tell parents is that your goal should be that your kid is the smartest kid in their friend group. Like you want your kid to be, when kids are using slang or they've got stuff wrong, like the baby grows in the mom's stomach, no, uterus, right? You want your kid to be like, not so much
Yeah.
uterus. And, this is challenging for folks because we don't want our kids to get in trouble. But if you're solid in your values about early, consistent, parent-led sexuality education, then you're going to be a peer leader, right? You're going to, your child, you can defend your child, you can protect your child. That should be the least of your worries. And the other piece of this is that think about this in terms of preparing your child. You're preparing your child for this big world of sexuality and relationships. I'm pretty sure all 200 and let's add us 30, whatever, 40 of us, we weren't prepared, right? And if we start with that mindset, right? And then it makes everything easier on them. So we're porn land here, right? So they already know what healthy sexuality looks like when they're exposed to porn, and the average age is, everybody says 12. I think it's 9. Right? It's young. They'll know like, oh, that's sex. That's not for kids. They're much more likely to stop watching and tell you and all of that. So, ultimately it's protective, and ultimately everybody wants their kid to grow up to be a whole, healthy, happy adult. And everybody needs to be prepared, right? Prepared. So when I had that moment for myself, I was like, oh yeah, I want my kid to be prepared for this. Right?
Yeah.
Really nice mindset change, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, I remember those calls with my own kids to come to the school because my son's using potty language, right? And he said uterus or vagina or something like that, and at a very young age. But that's if that's the least, like you said, if that's the least of your worries, then great, then great for you. Yes. Absolutely. So we get this question a lot. And we do at Culture Reframe, we're focusing on, 9 through 18 and above, right, with our tweens and teens program. But what do young children need to know? And when do they need to know it? It's that question all the time. Well, when do I start and what do I say? So we'll start with Kerri on this one.
Okay, great. So with my business, my focus is on 2 years old and up. And sometimes I hear things like, well, the information that you're sharing might be too much for a child to handle. And sort of funny when I teach the private body part names, like, oh, does a 2-year-old really need to know the word vulva or testicles? And I said, well, a lot of 2-year-olds can say Tyrannosaurus Rex. So I'm pretty sure that they can say vulva and testicles. For me, the earlier, the better. I think for the little people, so preschool age children, I would want them to know the private body part names, including the mouth, breast, nipple, areola, vulva, vagina, clitoris, anus, penis, testicles, and scrotum. And then later on, you can introduce, things like urethra and things like that, or you can just do it all together. I would want kids to know about their trusted adults, and trusted adults being people who listen, support them, respect their body boundaries, never ask them to do touches they don't want to do, and never ask them to keep a secret about their body. And so we want trusted adults in the home, and then we want trusted adults outside of the home in case the abuse is happening in the home. I want kids to know about safe, unsafe, and secret touch, and the difference between surprises and secrets. I also want them to know that it's okay to say no to adults, because we don't want to teach kids to be passive, because sometimes adults ask them to do something that's totally reasonable. And other times an adult crosses the line, and we want to be able to tell kids that it's okay to say no. I also want little people to know that their parents or their caregivers, if they do report abuse, that the caregiver or parent is going to believe them. And not only are they going to believe them, but they're going to praise them for coming to them with this most important information. And I tell little people that sexual abuse is not a kid's responsibility to solve. It's an adult responsibility to solve. And so I think those are kind of my main thing. I don't teach stranger danger. I teach strangers are people that we haven't met yet, and that most strangers are good people. And we will come into times where we're lost at the mall. We flip over the handlebar of our bike and we really need help. We've got to be able to ask. And we know that sexual abuse is about 2% from strangers. So I try to call them more like tricky people than stranger danger.
Yeah.
Yeah. Really, really awesome. And could you just, I know that I had a personal message here, the difference between surprises and secrets, if you could give us that. Yeah.
So surprises usually are good or fun. Not always. If someone scares you at Halloween, that might be a surprise. But surprises are something that everybody finds out about. So it could be a surprise holiday or a surprise birthday or a surprise gift. A secret the person has actually told you not to tell. And I always ask little people, why do you think they said keep it a secret? And someone says, because they know they were going to get in trouble, because they know what they were doing is not okay.
Mm,
And
yeah.
so I personally don't use the word secrets unless I'm specifically talking about private body parts. Sometimes the words get interchanged. Someone's like, well, don't tell anyone about the secret birthday party, but it's not a secret because everyone's going to find out about it. Really, what it is a surprise.
Mm, yeah, absolutely. And Amy, what can you add to that about what children need to know and when they need to know it?
All of that,
All that.
kind of obviously. And those are conversations that need to happen continuously. Like none of this is one and done. None of it is one and done. So I believe that people, by the time they're 5, they should know how babies are made. They should know the word sex. They should know the usual way babies are made, penis and vagina. People really struggle with those 3 little words.
Mhm.
They should understand about like sperm, egg, all that. And then also babies come to be in all different ways. So they should know those ways as well. And lots of folks think that it's too much information. But again, baby making butter, baby making butter. It's the same to them. We come to these conversations with everything we know, and it makes things hard on us. But the reality is, our kids are open to this, especially when they're under 10ish. They're open to it. They're curious. We want to capitalize on that. And part of that is saying it feels good to their grown up bodies. It's something they agree to do. They want to do this together. It's part of a romantic relationship sometimes. With those people, I would say just part of a romantic relationship. We can talk about hooking up later.
Yeah.
And then talking also, you can say, everybody, some people, they don't want to make a baby, right? They don't want to make a baby. They just want to be
Mhm.
together in this way. And again, not for kids, for later in life. So we do talk about values when we talk about sexuality. So I never say it's for marriage because that's not true. People have
Yeah.
sex before they get married, but if that's your belief, then say we believe it's for marriage because, and you
Mhm.
need to be very clear about why.
Yeah.
So I think that's super important. And then talking about different kinds of families and different kinds of relationships and making sure kids know that sometimes, boys and men fall in love with other boys and men and have relationships, and women and girls, and all of that. Because again, we're establishing normalcy. We're establishing
Mm.
normalcy. And also, right now we know that about 20% of people are queer. And so you can't always tell by looking. And so being mindful of that.
Mm.
And then again, this paves the way for puberty. I'm sorry, for puberty and porn exposure. Kerri,
Right.
I loved what you said about like starting in the middle with puberty. You have to backtrack to explain. But one thing about neurodivergent children is sometimes it's better to start with puberty, depending on where you are, because for lots of neurodivergent kids, those changes of the body can be very distressing. And so you might need to start there and then backtrack into the reason your body is changing because of these things. But generally speaking, ideally you're getting the sex business out of the way sooner. But that doesn't happen. That doesn't always happen, right? Some of you are probably going, "Oh my God, right? I haven't done this yet." But
Mhm.
don't worry, Kerri and I
Yeah.
will check.
Right. Kerri, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think I want kids to know about nudity and where it's appropriate to be nude. And
Mm.
I want them to know about privacy because when they are entering kindergarten, for example, they should be using the bathroom alone. And if that isn't sort of solidified, sometimes we can have quite a few little people in the bathroom all
Mm.
together at school or daycare or whatever. The other thing that I wanted to mention was the private versus public spaces and behaviors. Most of the private clients I deal with are clients with support needs, and they're doing things in public spaces that should be only done in private. So if all of our little people had a really good understanding that private means generally you're alone, the door is closed, bedroom, bathroom, and then in public spaces, I teach that we never show our private parts in a public place. And we talk about nose picking and reorganizing your underwear and farting and saying swear words and things like that. And where is it appropriate to do that? It's an activity that I start with a 5-year-old or a 60-year-old. I do the same activity because I need to establish whether they understand the difference or not. Because if they don't, we're going to have lots of problems later on.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I'm going to tag on, and then maybe there's something else you'd like to ask. So again, back to the neurodivergence. With the neurodivergent child, the autistic, ADHD, they have trouble with public-private. And so, getting a child who's touching their private parts, they're stimming that way, which means they're self-soothing that way. That's not okay in public, right? So how do you help a child who is, like you keep saying, that's not okay, you need to do it in private, but it just doesn't click? You need to be mindful that they're not doing it willfully, generally speaking, and help them find another way to self-soothe in public. And they can sort it, right? They can sort it. But I think one of the things that happens with kids who are touching their privates in public is we get a lot of shame, and it's inappropriate, which just side note, quit using that word. Just say not okay. And nobody knows what inappropriate means. It's too big. It's like Tyrannosaurus Rex, right?
Yeah.
Like T-Rex, right? So it's not okay to do that. It's not safe. So just being mindful of the kiddo, right? Mindful of the kiddo. Most kids get it. Some kids just don't.
And I'm gonna weave in some of the questions that we're getting that pop up as they come in. So someone asked, can you help share some language or rationale for why certain behaviors are supposed to be in private? Yeah. Either one of you.
Kerri, you're the privacy queen. What you got?
Okay, what question one more time?
Can you help share some language or rationale for why certain behaviors are supposed to be in private versus public?
I mean, I think that's developmental too, right? Because little people will sit in front of the TV, will touch their private parts, will touch their private parts in the bedroom when an adult is reading them a story. So that's a self-soothing behavior, especially if there's things going on with that little person. And it usually happens at the end of the day when we're trying to figure out our whole day. I mean, I just use the word private body parts. Private body parts are for private spaces when you're alone. So if you're in the bathtub or the shower or your bedroom, visuals are really good with little kids. And amaze.org has Junior has some really great videos. They have 4 videos that I'm aware of about the private body parts. And so watching those with kids and understanding that, yeah, you might feel excited about being naked in the backyard, but we also have neighbors and we have to respect their feelings about seeing nudity. But I think for some kids, this just clicks, right? Little people, they're not going to understand private and public right out of the gate. But these are sexual abuse prevention tools for a child, right? So that they're not, a babysitter's over and they're not touching their penis while they're watching TV because the adult or teenager may say, oh, I know what you're doing. I do that too. Is it okay if I do that with you? Right. And like a 3-year-old, like, okay. And then who knows kind of, well, I know where that's going. That's going in a really terrible direction. So one thing I wanted to say earlier that I had a brain fart and I forgot to say it was that, when I hear this is too much for kids, kids can handle education. They actually will absorb what they can, and they literally, then they're saturated. They won't remember. And that's why kids ask the same questions over and over again. What kids cannot handle is being sexually abused. So it's either education for prevention or no education. And the child is then more attractive, like Amy said earlier, to a person with predatory intentions.
Mm-hmm.
And just to be super clear, this is not 100%. It's a package of things you can do, because sexual abuse happens no matter what, but your job is to make sure your child is as informed as possible, and so they're as safe as possible. So one of the things that I say to parents about talking about this, like, it's just really the reality is that some people feel uncomfortable.
Mm.
People feel uncomfortable when they see somebody touching their privates in public. People feel uncomfortable when you use that kind of language, right? So that is something, and we don't want people to feel uncomfortable. And frankly, for people, you can get in trouble. Like, not with me, be very clear. Adults are weird, people are weird, not me. You can get in trouble. I don't want you to get in trouble, but you can always tell me. And so just establishing it that way. And I'm just going to just move on into family nudity because that is one big damn question. So this is a family choice. It is totally fine for you to be naked in front of your kids. It is totally fine to not be naked in front of your kids. Usually by the time kids are 5 or 6, when they have, like, there's lots of naked nudity when they're little. By the time they're 5 or so, you should have a family rule when friends are over, underpants at the very least, but close stay on. One thing I believe about family nudity, especially with women and girls, I believe that everybody needs to see a normal adult woman's body, and because porn. And so when they see you or illustrations, there are books that have great illustrations of normal women's bodies, of all kinds, that establishes, like, oh, this is what my body's going to look like. This is what my body should look like, or not should, but that is super important. But that's my value. So if you're not a naked family, totally fine. If you are a naked family, totally fine. And in Europe, where they're really naked, Scandinavia, those kids, everybody does better. Less everything. It's not because of the nudity, but it's because of the openness about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And just one more question that I'd like to answer live before, and we will be answering these Q&A questions at the end, but one clarification. Kerri, you mentioned amaze.org, right? That was so I wanted to make sure that I said that again, and we will put that in our packet, our resource packet that will go out to everyone at the end of this. So amaze.org.
And for the little people, it's amaze.org/JR for junior.
Okay. We'll make sure that we put that in there as well. Junior.
Yeah. Amaze is good for everyone. Amaze is great for everyone. Like,
Amaze is wonderful.
Yeah, it's so wonderful. And if I'm just going to throw another resource out there.
Yeah.
Oh crap. It's called, oh shoot. I'll remember it and tell you all.
Yeah.
It's out of Canada, and it's a classroom style video series, a TV show, for kids, middle school, and up. So
wonderful.
It'll
come to you, and we'll put it in there too. Yeah. So when we were speaking about bathrooms, that was something that was really important to a couple of our attendees here. Can you share some examples of how elementary schools have supported appropriate bathroom use? I don't know if that's the word, but to help reduce groups in the bathrooms and curiosity and exploration, and how parents could advocate for healthier bathroom policies at their kids' schools?
Well, first of all, you need to find out what it is.
Yep.
You need to find out what it is. Elementary school's hard. I'm not, maybe Kerri, you should handle this, but that's my 2 cents. And then talking to your kids about what's okay and safe in a bathroom, and how to trust their gut about what might be going sideways. But Kerri, go.
So through your parent advisory council, or I think in the States is PTA, I think what Amy said, is there a policy? And if there isn't a policy needs to be drafted. I've just created a new presentation that I hope to roll out in May. It's called Peer-to-Peer Sexual Harm. The bathroom is a hot spot. This is problematic. Sometimes kids are agreeing to meet in the bathroom. Sexual abuse, sexual assaults happen in bathrooms. So, for the little people classrooms, from where I'm from, most of the kindergarten classrooms have a bathroom in the classroom. And so it's easier to monitor that. But I like kids to use the bathrooms on break time. I remember one time I was in a school and I walked past, and sometimes the behavior is just silly and curious. Three or four boys, I could see them coming past. They all had their pants down. They had put paper towel on the bottom, like of a large urinal, and they were peeing on the paper towel to see if it could rise. Now, I was like, okay, we need, this needs to be cleaned up. But they wanted to call a custodian instead of putting gloves on the kids, which I understand that's more of a custodial job. But so sometimes it's just play and being silly, but sometimes kids are being sexually harmed in the bathroom. So a buddy system might be something to take a look at with a child choosing someone. Maybe the teacher says not those two together because maybe they're kind of silly, and there might be another child that they match them with, even if the child doesn't have to go to the bathroom. But it is a high stakes area, just like sleepovers and things like that. The bus.
Yeah, absolutely. And Amy, was the this Canadian show called About Sex? No?
No, I think it's Everybody Curious.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And the shame
Okay.
here is that I'm a producer.
No worries. No worries.
Like
That's
Everybody
great.
Curious. It's great too.
Yeah.
Very diverse hosts and kids and all kinds of things. So it's really delightful.
Perfect. And just a reminder, we're going to put all of these resources together in a resource packet for you and send all of the attendees and those who registered the email with all of the information. So you don't have to worry about writing it down right now. You can just listen. Okay, so I'm going to move on to another question. And this is about the differences between healthy, typical sexual behaviors and unhealthy behaviors. So Amy, do you want to start us off there?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So, like I said, child sexual development, we don't know much about this. So I'm just going to be super brief. But for the 5 and under set, you should expect to see curiosity about body parts, talk about them, curiosity about pregnancy and birth, and then touching. And one of the things about young kids is, like Kerri said, they see this as a game. So,
Mm.
and it's funny to them if it's healthy and typical. Just as an example, one of my friends, she picked up her kiddo from preschool and she said, "How was your day?" And he said, "Not so great." And she's like, "Yeah, what happened?" And "What's going on?" And he said, "Well, today at our penis meeting, Owen and I," and she's like, penis meeting, what the hell is a penis meeting?"
Right.
So every day at outside time, Owen and Elliot would go behind the bush and take their penises out of their pants, have a meeting, and then go back to playing.
Hmm.
And so we don't want penis meetings, right? Because that can lead to touch and other problems. And so they took the shrubbery out. So one of the ways to determine, is this concerning? So what we look for, is the behavior adult-like? Is it repeated? And how's your adult concern? So I'm just going to give you a counteraction to that so you can test the waters here. So my spouse is a motorcycle maniac, and every Wednesday night he has bike night. And so, do you think that my spouse, Kerri, and his platonic friend, Scott, pop off into a corner and have a penis meeting?
Mm.
They do not. I checked.
Mhm.
So, a real quick way to tell, is this typical and common, is just to say, is this something adults would do? And then as they get older, more exploration, like a lot of the stuff that kind of went on for you, like the crushing and then the boyfriend girlfriending, some exploration of private body parts, practice kissing, body rubbing. This is all stuff we expect to see. And again, if it's adult-like, if it's repeated, and your gut is like, "Oh, this doesn't feel right," that's pretty good indicator. And then by the time they're in puberty, things get more serious. You're going to hear more sexual slang, more talk about like different genders, sexual orientation, trying to sort that out. Kids might try like making out like mad things, or more personal touching a couple of times, but it's not a regular part of their repertoire, for lack of a better
Mhm.
thing. Everybody knows that we masturbate in private, and the little people, like Kerri was saying, takes a minute to figure that out. And then by the time they're 13 to 16 in adolescence, they are doing just about everything. Not everybody, not everybody. And for concern for that age group, we want to, if it's, we're looking at sexual interest in younger children or like peeping Tom behaviors. Everybody is porn exposed. Just assume they're all porn exposed. Don't pretend that's not happened. And it's influencing their behaviors. So we're seeing a downward drift. We're seeing more adult-like behaviors in that elementary age. The moaning on the playground, the 69 chat, that's all come down the pike from porn, which now makes it common, right? It doesn't make it okay. It makes it common and now kind of typical, which we don't want that. It's in this weird category. And wouldn't you say, Kerri, like, what do you do with those porn? They're concerning behaviors, but it's just kind of both and weird thing for me. I don't know what you think. And of course, obviously, anything to add to that.
Sure. So I get a lot of parents reaching out to me about kind of elevated to this level of concern.
Yeah.
And what I do is I have a child sexual behavior chart in my shop on my website, and you'll get the link for that. Basically, it has 3 columns. So one's healthy and expected behavior for up to 5, and then sort of 5 to grade 4. And we're looking for things that are kind of like unusual. So when the parents fill out the form, they print it off, they take a highlighter, they circle what their child's doing. And most of the time, like, oh, that's falling in the healthy expected range.
Mm-hmm.
And so for the little people, things that I see a lot of are things like a child who wants to see other people naked. So this is sort of under 5, completely normal. Children who touch their own private parts when diapering, when in the bath, before bed, at story time, totally normal. Having a preoccupation sort of with other people's genitals of familiar adults and other kids that they know. So if they're in kindergarten and they pull their pants out on the playground because they have a foreskin and their friend doesn't, that is like a science lab right there. And it is really curiosity driven. But as adults, we kind of look at it with a sexualized lens and say, oh, this is like, I've even heard adults call children predatory. And like, please don't do that. That's curiosity driven. Even if someone pokes someone's, private body parts, that again is like, I saw it, I wanted to touch it, I did. Even the little people that I work with that have experienced sexual abuse, sometimes they say to me, listen, Kerri, I liked it. Like, I don't even know, like a 5-year-old with a 5-year-old, because when we have 2 kids, same age, same power dynamic, playing doctor, that's very common. The things that we want to look for is an age discrepancy, a power imbalance, someone who's neurotypical, someone who's neurodiverse. Those are the things that we want to be looking for. Other things, kids are trying out gender roles. What does it be to be male or female? Some kids are exploring their gender identity. We've got, kids liking to be nude. They're wanting to call it pee-pee, poo-poo, boogers, wiener, vajayjay, instead of the private body part names. But that's a developmental phase. That's a bathroom humor stage that we actually want children to go through. And some adults, to be quite honest, they're still not there, because when they go to the doctor, they're not able to say, I have a rash on my scrotum. They will call it a ball sack or whatever. Not that that's a problem. The doctor will probably know what you're talking about. But as adults, we want to use the correct private body part names. Other than, I'm going to say another one too. Kids like holes. Put things in their ears. They like to put things in their mouth. They like to put things in their nose. They like to put things in their vagina, and they like to put things in their anus. Now, from an experimentation point of view, it's okay. Just say, hey, we don't put things in our vagina or anus because we might actually hurt ourselves. And some of my clients, I'm hired to work with them because they're doing internal exploration with items that actually could be dangerous for them. I remember I had a 5-year-old client and we put a bunch of things on the table, and I said, which of these things could be put into your vagina that wouldn't hurt you? And then we narrowed it down to the things, and the family said, we're okay if she puts something in their vagina, but we want to know what it is so it doesn't get put back in the drawer, right? And washed. Like, that's what kids do. It's like, and do we want them to do that? Do we want them to touch other children's private parts? We don't. But that is when education comes in. We don't shame kids for their general curiosity. We educate, and then we like move them over here. Like, we talked about it and now we're moving on because it's snack time. Like that level of
Yeah. Thanks. Those are really, really great examples. And yeah, we come to this and with freak out, right? Any kind of touch, any kind of kid to kid, is the first place most people go is this is sexual abuse, and it's just usually not. Usually not. Yeah, it's usually curiosity based for sure.
And I'm just going to add, so in terms of behavior that would be like, so touching, I don't have a lot of red flags about that as long as they're age, similar age. The things that I'm looking for, and Amy mentioned this before, like a child who is 7 does not think about putting their mouth on someone's vulva, their anus, or their penis. So what I say to parents is this is something to be curious about, because I don't want to, get them all excited for nothing. But, having penetration, the penis to the anus or the penis to the vagina in, under 12 kids. So I go to, I wonder if they saw pornography. I wonder if they accidentally walked in on they're grown-ups having sex. And by the way, we don't have to call it wrestling. We can actually tell the child that we're having some private, intimate time. Please close the door and we can talk about this later. So anything, kids drawing pictures of, a bigger penis with semen coming out of it. Like that is like, where did they get that, right? They might draw the genitals, which is curiosity driven, but it's when they have information that far out, like exceeds their age. That's when we have to be like, this is very interesting. What is going on here?
So when we were talking about that, we had some questions about when kids have been exposed to porn and the idea of role play or enacting those behaviors. And I know that we deal a lot with this too with the olders, the tweens and the teens. What would be your concern, or how would you see that as did porn influence some of this type of role play? Amy, did you want?
So oftentimes that is what's happened. They've been porn exposed. And so they're trying to make sense of what they've seen. And again, this feels a little weird to say, but it's probably not predatory per se, because they're just trying to figure it out. And children are not predators. 5-year-olds, they're not predators. A 15-year-old and a 5-year-old, predator. So that's what we can see. We see language. So if a kid's engaging in an adult-like sexual behavior, right now, the first place I go is, how's the online time? Right?
Yeah.
Like they see it. And parents, like I had a client once, we did a consultation because she was 7-year-old, had Googled horses and made her way to porn. So it happens innocently. And so we were done with our session. I was like, how the hell do you get from horses to porn? Well, if you scroll down through the images, if you've never seen an erect horse penis, you cannot unsee things. And then horse penis, right? So, like I said, this is going to happen. And so again, the thing to do that's protective is to talk openly about sexuality and to tell them this is what porn is. And for a young child, I recommend you say things like, sometimes when you're on the internet, you can see videos of naked people doing things together. This is adult stuff. It's not for kids. Stop watching. Tell me you won't be in trouble. And you won't be in trouble all the time. And then when it happens and you find out, you still have to keep your poop in a group because you already said you won't be in trouble. And so you're preparing them and giving them some skills around like what to do. And they might say why, right? The endless why. And you can say, why? Because this can be scary and confusing for kids. It can give you bad ideas about, relationships and sexuality. With an older kid, you can be more direct and let's say, hey, you know what? There are videos of people having sex on the internet. It's called porn or pornography. Do you know what I'm talking about? Right? Pop that in there. They might say yes, they probably will say no. And then you explain what it is. You can be more detailed and say people's bodies don't look like that. They don't do those things. They don't make those noises. And it's something that people like to watch because it makes them feel good in a sexual way. And then you give your value, which ideally is no. Maybe more words than that. And then you have to have a continuing conversation. And if you are not, okay, I soapbox on this, if you are not using any parental controls or monitoring, you are putting your child at high risk for all kinds of things. There's great products out there. You have to pay for some of them, but you need to make every effort. So figuring out how to use the internal, parental controls. And nobody wants their kid to see this. I mean, I don't want to see it. I don't need to look anymore because I get messages in my Instagram of group porn.
Right.
Great. Not great.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we're going to move on to the Q&A session. We have a few minutes here left in the end, and there's so many questions. So I'm going to do my very best to get them answered for you. And if we can't answer them, we will send them to the panelists to see if they can provide some generalized discussion about it that we will include in the resources. So a lot of questions come out with met some parents who feel really awkward or sheepish in talking about these subjects with their kids. So any advice, if you were to give your top advice to parents, what would it be in starting these conversations?
Well, I'll start. Basically, the more we talk about it, the easier it is. And when I talk to children, I say there's three kinds of families. Family number one, grown-ups. I learned about my body today, and they go, shh, we don't talk about that in this home. Family number two, grown-ups. I learned about my body today, and they say cool, and literally nothing else. And then family number three goes, yes, awesome. Let's make a big bowl of popcorn. Sit down, tell me all about it, leave nothing out. And we're following this up with a trip to the library. And the kids laugh. And then I get them to say, hey, do you think your grown-ups are a 1, 2, or 3? I said, 1 is not bad, 3 is not better. It's all families are different. But starting the conversation knowing that you're equipping your child with tools to increase abuse resistance is hopefully enough drive in itself. And if your grown-ups didn't tell you about it, and then now you're in a different situation where you actually want to give your child the information, go to the library, get out some books. You're going to have some resource lists from us about what books are great for what age group. And yeah, sometimes we have to dive in because when we become a parent, whether we want to or not, you are your child's sexual health educator. They want to come to you. We know kids want to be able to come to their grown-ups. And then when they want to start going to their friends, which is natural and healthy for them to do that, all of the kids have accurate information that they can share with one another. So the blind is not leading the blind.
Yeah. One of the things that I tell parents to do is just to call it out and say, I do not know what I'm doing. I'm probably going to be awkward and weird and uncomfortable. You might too, but this is so important for your health and safety in future. And you might not like it, fine, but I'm going to be communicating with you about this because, I'm working with neurodivergent families and kids, it's not talk.
Yeah.
It's communicate, which feels very awkward to me, but yeah, it's communicate. So how we're going to communicate about this. I'm going to help you learn about it. And then another tip is to just take some time. Like if you have time when we're done today, I think it's really important to just think about like, what do you want for your child? What do you want for your child in terms of their future relationships, their relationship with sexuality? That's one little thing. How did you learn? What were your values? And then when you do that, you kind of shed some of the crap that's hanging around. And then And then of all the things that you need to talk about, just pick something that feels low stakes. Like pick something that feels easy. And for kids who, if you have not started talking and they're 8 and under, and you've got it older than 8, the only first conversation is what I just said. Well, a couple of things. So first of all, apologize. I'm sorry. We should have been talking about this sooner. I'm awkward. I don't know what I'm doing. Didn't get this, that little spiel. Then we're going to start communicating about this. Yeah, just wanted to give you a heads up, and that is it. You're just going to introduce it, and then you get to run screaming. My kind of like litmus test is if you have when you're having more conversations, if you have a sweaty upper lip, you're hitting it. So your goal is sweaty upper lip. And do not worry about giving them too much information. What Kerri said, they're going to hear what they're going to hear. You cannot hurt them. You cannot hurt them. The world is going to hurt them in terms of their sexual health education. That's where the pain's going to come.
That's a great point. And we are going to get Amy and Kerri's book recommendations and resource recommendations. So we will be sending that out to you as well. Another question, a group of questions are involving the role. Whose role is it to teach this sexual health education to children? We've got some questions about, should this be in the home? Should this be at school? What do we think about that? Yeah.
Okay, I will go. So in an ideal world, this is talked about at school, at home, on the soccer field, by the grandparents, by the aunts and uncles as a protective tool. So if all of the adults in the world are able to do their own work with their own sexual trauma, then they are going to be available to answer kids' questions. Coaches have a very prominent role in our communities, and lots of athletes look up to coaches as almost like a godlike figure. So I do think it has to be in schools. In British Columbia, where I am from, we have curriculum from kindergarten to grade 10. It's mandated by the Ministry of Education. It has to be everywhere because kids are online so prolifically. Teens like 9 hours a day, some people doing homework, watching YouTube, Snapchatting, looking at Instagram, and it's just part of their life. So we have to do a lot of combating of what they're hearing on the media to give them accurate, up-to-date facts. And it's the community's responsibility to raise a child.
So I agreed. I do want to push back on just a little asterisk with the coach. Coaches are in a very clear position of power with the child. And so just be mindful. If the coach tells you that your child is a marvel and they want to give them one-on-one attention, that's a red flag. If they groom the family, if your gut tells you this seems odd, it's odd. There's something wrong. I also think, again, back to your safe adult piece, the majority of the time, the person who sexually abuses a child is known to the family. So just be mindful of that. And then where I live in the United States, our sex education is crappy. So I believe that no matter what quality of sex ed your child has access to at school, they need to go because you need to know what they're being taught. And you need to counteract it. Like in the South, they have horrific sex ed, even though they're not supposed to. Where I live in Washington State, it's the same as Kerri, and British Columbia, it's comprehensive. And so they need it from all quarters. And they need it from all quarters because the more they can get that's healthy, like Kerri said, the better off they are. And it also gives you a place to kind of pop around with conversations, right? It gives you a spot. And lots of parents are concerned, like with comprehensive sexuality education, that it's too much. It's not enough. It's just not enough. And again, I'm just going to back up the truck here to preparing them. We're getting them ready, right? We're getting them ready. So all the resources, talk a lot, communicate a lot, and don't worry about them getting hurt. Don't worry. You're not going to hurt them. School sex ed isn't going to hurt. Well, if it's terrible, it might, but you're going to be there counteracting it.
Right. And I did want to mention there were some conversations in the Q&A and in the chat about the older ages, our 9 through 18, and Culture Reframed has parents programs that really get you ready to have this conversation, that talk about the ways in which we can start it, how we can continue it on, and scaffold the information that both Amy and Kerri had been talking about, so that you are better prepared and you feel confident in having these really awkward conversations. Gail, I saw that you were back on. Did you want to? Oh, you're on mute. Yeah.
I wanted to thank the guests for this fascinating conversation. There's lots of great questions as well. So you've really hit a nerve with what you're saying. Thank you so much. And at Culture Reframed, we know at some point we're going to have to talk about younger kids because of the scaffolding issues. We started with our tweens program, we went on to our teens. But unless you scaffold, and I'm sure, we all did it with our own kids and we knew exactly how to scaffold. And I think what you said was so important is that kids know when they've had enough and they don't want to hear you anymore, right? They know exactly, and you'll get that look, and you know what that look is, and you let it go. So I remember often with my own son, just having short conversations, like they say, 101-minute conversations instead of 100-minute. And the society unfortunately provides so many opportunities for these conversations. You go past a billboard, and I would say, "What's wrong with that?" It's really sexist because she's got no clothes on. And even just at the age of 4 or 5, you would be able to pick out these things because, and I want to say that often it's useful that their first language is feminism for boys and girls, because then they learn to respect not only women, but themselves as well. And that's what we never teach. We teach girls about somewhat bodily boundaries. We don't teach boys about bodily boundaries. We don't, in this culture, we assume boys will be boys, and that means they'll basically do anything sexually that they can. So I think we really miss opportunities for the boys as well. So I'd like to say thank you. Mandy, do you have any last words?
Yeah. I'd just like to wrap it up. Of course, I'd like to extend a huge thank you to our panelists, Amy and Kerri, for sharing your expertise, your experience, and all those who took the time to join us in this amazing conversation. Please consider donating to Culture Reframed so we can keep our programs and webinars free, and be on the lookout for our next webinar in the summer and for an email with all of those resources that are going to be compiled from today's discussion. We appreciate you for your dedication to reframing the conversation with us. Have a great rest of your week, and we hope you have a good Passover for those who celebrate. Thank you so much. Enjoy your day.